Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Bank Shop Breakdown. We're going to go over 5 college basketball games for Wednesday, November 6, 2024. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your college basketball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. I got my college basketball Bank Shop best bet each day, as well as my college basketball season pass, which is right now an opening week special price. So check it out at Pick Dawgz Premium. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Wednesday in college hoops. First up, we see Columbia and Villanova. This one's going to be 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Now, both of these teams played on Monday, and both of these teams won, but failed to cover in their first games as favorites. We saw Villanova against Lafayette, 18.5-point favorite. They win that game by 12, 75-63. Columbia against Loyola Maryland on the road, 6.5-point favorite. They win 81-78 by 3 points. But honestly, I was a little bit more impressed with Columbia's performance because this was a Columbia team that last year was 18th best in the country in three-point shooting, shot it better than 37% from beyond the arc, and they returned a lot of those sharpshooters this season. Guys like Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa, Kenny Nolan, and Blair Thompson. But in that first game against Loyola Maryland, the shots really weren't falling from three. They only made 7 of them for a 30% rate, 30.4%. They still scored 81 points in that game and won the game on the road. So it tells me, you score 81 points without the three-point shot, your offense is a little bit more one or two-dimensional than we thought. They were able to get to the free throw line. They were 55% from two-point range. They had 8 offensive rebounds. So it was actually a decent, offensive showing from Columbia. And now I think going forward, when you add in those three-point numbers that we saw from last year from these guys, they're going to be a pretty tough offense in this Ivy League this season. The defense still, some question marks there. But the good thing is, matchup-wise, Villanova in that first game against Lafayette, not a great offensive showing. They had 17 turnovers, which is very unlike Villanova. They didn't shoot the ball that well. They only had 11 trips to the free throw line. So for me, Villanova is going to be a strong defensive team, but Columbia hits enough shots in this game, I think, to cover the number. We're getting a ton of points with Columbia, the Lions, in this game. So give me the Lions plus the points. Next up, we see Campbell and Virginia. This one's going to be 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Now, Campbell played in its first game on Monday against a subdivision team in Pfeiffer. They won that game 96-49, but doesn't really tell us too much. And honestly, when you look at this Campbell roster on paper, not really in love with it. I do think they finished towards the bottom of the CAA standings this year, and I think this is a tough matchup against Virginia. Now, we know Virginia is playing in its first game without head coach Tony Bennett, who retired in the offseason only a couple of weeks ago, and it's definitely not going to be an easy person to replace, as he's been one of the best, and legendary head coaches in college basketball in recent years. But Ron Sanchez, he knows the system. He was the assistant last year with Virginia, and this team, still brought back a good amount of production from last year's team. It may not be the most talented Virginia team we've ever seen, and we've seen some good teams, obviously, only 5 years removed from a national championship, but I still think Virginia is going to be a very solid team in a non-conference play against inferior opponents like this one, like Campbell. I think Virginia handles its business, and we're getting actually a decent price with the Cavs because of the lack of big names on their roster. I think Virginia's defense way too much in this game for Campbell, for especially two halves. I think maybe early on this is a closer game as Virginia tries to get its footing, but as the game goes on, I think the Cavs are just too much. So give me Virginia. I'm going to lay the points. Next up, we see SIUE taking on Indiana. This one's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern on the Big Ten Network. Now, Indiana is a giant favorite in this game, and I think for good reason. I think there's a lot to be excited about for the Hoosiers this year. This roster looks stacked on paper. Yes, you lose Ware to the NBA as he's a member of the Heat now, and he was your leading scorer and rebounder, but you bring in Ballo from Arizona, a nice pickup in the front court. He averaged a double-double last year, 13 points per game, 10 rebounds per game. And not just the front court is looking decent for Indiana. This back court looks like one of the best in the Big Ten on paper. I think Indiana is really going to put together a good showing in this game and going forward. SIUE played its first game against a subdivision opponent, similar to Campbell. Doesn't really tell us too much. I'm not in love with this roster on paper either, and I think this is a really tough matchup for them. I think Indiana wins this game in blowout fashion, so I'm going to lay the points with the Hoosiers. Next up, we see ULM and LSU. This one's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. And similar to what we saw with Campbell and SIUE, ULM played their first game on Monday against a subdivision opponent, and they won that game in blowout fashion against champion Christian, 111 to 61, but it doesn't really tell us much going into this game. A huge step-up game against an LSU team that I think not only has improved this season on paper, but also took some strides towards the end of last year in regular season play. Obviously didn't do too well in the postseason, but they won some nice games in the SEC. They had an upset win against Kentucky late in the year, and now they bring in some really key guys. I mean, Jordan Sears from UT Martin averaged about 22 points per game last year. He was a 43% three-point shooter. He's going to be great for this offense. And Cam Carter from Kansas State, he's a two-way player. He had 14 points per game, 5 rebounds per game as a guard. He has to work on that perimeter shooting, only about 31%, but he took about 6 threes per game, so he's not afraid to take them. I think LSU's offense, especially in the backcourt, could be fine, and the talent that they may lack in the front court is made up in size. So I think LSU is going to be a team to watch out for in the SEC, a loaded SEC conference. I like their chances for a blowout win in this game. And the final game we're going to talk about for the Wednesday card in college basketball, it's going to be UC San Diego and San Diego State. This one's going to be a 10 p.m. Eastern start time on the Mountain West Network. Now, this is a matchup between two teams that did not play yet this season. Both UC San Diego and San Diego State will be making their season debuts. This is also a rematch from last year and a revenge game for UC San Diego, as they lost last year's matchup against a much better San Diego State team, in my opinion, by 1 point. And I believe it was a buzzer beater win for San Diego State as well, or a virtual buzzer beater. And UC San Diego covered easily. I believe we talked about this game on the Bank Shot Breakdown last year as well. I know it as a premium play, but it was a very close game, competitive game. And like I said, I think that was a much better San Diego State team last year. Going into this year, I think it could be a little bit of a down year for San Diego State. I still think defensively they'll be one of the better teams in the country, but I do worry about their offense early on. And I would not want to be laying this many points with an offense I do not trust against a revenge-minded foe. And UC San Diego, they lose Bryce Pope, who was an excellent scorer. He had 18 points per game and shot well. He was just an all-around player for UC San Diego, but they still returned 3 of their top 5 leading scorers, including 2 guys that averaged double-digit scoring per game. So I think the Tritons, they were a pretty young team last year. They get some more experience. They're playing with revenge. I think it's a great spot for them on the road, catching a lot of points. So give me UC San Diego. Give me the points, and I'll sprinkle on the money line. And that's it. Those are the games for Wednesday in college basketball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Put those college hoops picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.